surprised at just how dark and disturbing things got in Hyde Street number 2, to the point where I actually wondered, did they take things too far? So it looks like our two main characters in this book, or at least two of our main characters, are going to be Mr. X-Ray and Pranky. This issue focuses on Pranky. Pranky is like an 11-year-old boy who's been possessed by the devil or made some kind of deal with the devil. It's not entirely clear yet. But yeah, Mr. X-Ray seems to be trying to save people and send them to the afterlife. And Pranky seems to want people to give in to their worst impulses so he can send them to hell. Hyde Street number 2 is a Pranky-focused issue, and we see the Pranky character interacting with a serial killer character. And there's a point in this issue where we get some adult-on-child violence as the killer character attacks the Pranky character. And it's not a case where we see like the beginning of the attack, but then they cut away. I mean, they stay with it through the whole thing. It only lasts about a page, but yeah, we see the light leave Pranky's eyes. It's disturbing. I talked about this when I discussed Hello Darkness number 3 a couple months ago. I can't bring myself to be mad at a horror story for showing me something horrible. That's kind of part of the deal. That'd be like getting mad after going into a strip club because you saw some boobies. It doesn't really make sense. I will say, though, that I don't think this issue needed that. I don't think we needed to see the duration of the attack. I think this issue has enough horrible, shocking stuff in it that might have been more than we needed. Although from a writing standpoint and a storytelling standpoint, I guess it does kind of give us a sense of where we can go and where the boundaries are for Hyde Street, which is to say that there aren't many boundaries. This book can show us some twisted, horrible things if it wants to. On an entirely different note, I appreciated the Norman Rockwell imagery in this issue. The cover is a clear homage to The Runaway, which is one of Norman Rockwell's most famous paintings. This issue has the distinction of being the only comic book I've ever read that I've literally looked at and told out loud to shut the hell up. Oh, come on now, you didn't literally do that. Yes, I did. I was there. And I'm going to tell you why I did it in just a minute. This is Black Canary, Best of the Best, number 1. So this issue and this story at large are based around a big money fight that's going to happen between Black Canary and Lady Shiva. It's played up like a big-time boxing match or a wrestling match or something. But of course the story isn't just the fight itself, it's also about how we got to the fight, what the stakes are for Dinah Lance, Black Canary, how she trains for the fight, who she trains with, etc. The book is beautifully drawn by our artist here, Ryan Sook. He makes Dinah very beautiful, but I love that he's not afraid to put some muscle on her. Like, look at her arms in this image. It's great. Our author here, by the way, is Tom King, who I've had some adventures with this year, and I'm about to have another one right now. But yeah, this is a big event-type fight between Black Canary and Lady Shiva. There's a big crowd. We see other DC heroes watching it on television. And of course, with any big event fight, you have announcers. You have a play-by-play type guy and an analyst type guy who not only call what they're seeing, but they break it down and they analyze it, things like that. And of course, we have announcers for this fight. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is that when we cut to scenes that aren't the fight itself, we still have the analysis and the breakdowns from the announcers overlaying everything. So for instance, when Dinah goes back to her hometown to train for this big fight, we still have the announcers with us. Their dialogue is still present even as Dinah is not in the fight setting. And that's annoying. You're trying to get into what's going on in the scene in this reunion that Dinah has with somebody, but the announcers just keep talking. This is a rare instance where a comic book is too loud. This sports announcer trick is something that Tom King did during his Batman run. And it worked okay there, but boy does he overdo it with this Black Canary book. And that's a shame, because I was really looking forward to seeing what Tom King would do with Black Canary based on what he has done with Wonder Woman in that ongoing series. Another strong female character. But yeah, that announcer stuff just ruined the issue for me. David Nakayama does a variant cover for this book, and that happens to be the cover that I picked up at my local comic shop. Well, this morning, my 3-year-old daughter happened to catch a look at it, and she asked me, "Is that Taylor?" Taylor as in Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is big in our house right now. I can see it. In the case of Hornsby and Halo #1 from Ghost Machine, it's interesting to me what conventional common sense and logic would indicate that you remember about this story versus what you actually remember and what stays with you, and how that's a recurring theme in Peter Tomasi's writing. I'll explain. So Hornsby and Halo is about a boy from heaven and a girl from hell, and through political what's-its, they wound up with adopted families on Earth raising them. And they've got superpowers, and there's various elements of drama that are going to unfold here. Now, in talking about Hornsby and Halo #1, I'm not trying to downplay the contributions of the artist, the colorist, the editor, anybody. But for the purposes of what I'm doing now, I do want to focus on our author here, Peter Tomasi. Common sense and logic, I think, would indicate that you would read an issue like this and remember the extraordinary stuff, the angels and demons stuff, the heaven and hell stuff. And hey, there is some great art in this issue along those lines. But what I came out of this issue thinking about, and what I'm still thinking about days later as it relates to Hornsby and Halo #1, is a moment on a school bus between our main characters, Zachary and Rose. Zach has Rose's book of drawings, and he's holding it outside the school bus window while it's moving, and the tension is, is he going to drop it? Are they going to be lost? Etc. I love that moment because not only is it so, intimate and personal between the two characters, but, stuff like that happens when you ride a school bus with other kids. It's so commonplace, so ordinary. And yet, Tomasi and our entire creative team here are able to mine an ordinary moment like that for maximum impact in the story. I haven't read all of Peter Tomasi's work, though I am a fan, but this kind of thing also happened in his Batman and Robin run and his Superman run, both of which were kind of family-oriented, and both were mostly done with Patrick Gleason on the pencils. For instance, the moment that I remember more than any from Tomasi and Gleason's Batman and Robin run happens in issue 8, which I think came out in 2012. It's just a conversation between Bruce Wayne and his son Damian, Robin, in a room. Bruce explains why Batman and Robin don't kill criminals, and we see Damian be emotionally vulnerable for the first time in the story. It's really impactful. It's a great scene. Moments like that demonstrate why Tomasi is uniquely qualified to be in charge of his own little section of the Ghost Machine universe, this Family Odysseys universe that he's apparently at the helm of. And I'm very curious to see what he does not only with Hornsby and Halo, but with the Rockefellers as well, which is the other piece of the Family Odysseys universe. He's doing that book with Francis Manipool. And incidentally, you can hear me talk in long form about the Rockefellers #1 on the latest edition of the Ghost Machine Fans podcast. Episode number 36 it is. I had a great conversation with host Nick Wilson. The Dark Knight is on the trail of a twisted and sadistic serial killer in Batman Dark Patterns #1. Although for Batman, that's like a Tuesday, right? So in universe, this should be wrapped up pretty quickly, like by Wednesday or I guess Thursday at the latest. I kid, of course. Dark Patterns takes place early in Batman's career, and the killer he's after is like a torturer type person. Interestingly enough, Hayden Sherman, our penciler here, also worked on a story called Dark Spaces Dungeon over at IDW, which was also about a torturer type person. I'm not saying Hayden Sherman has a weird fascination for torturing people, but he is kind of making it his wheelhouse, isn't he? Actually, Hayden Sherman being on this book was the big attractor for me. I've really enjoyed his stuff these past few years, including his work on Absolute Wonder Woman, which is currently ongoing. At certain points in this issue, his work kind of reminded me of that of the late Tim Sale, which hit a sentimental spot with me. On the subject of things and people that I miss, Alfred is in this story, given that it takes place early in Batman's crime-fighting career. DC killed off Alfred in the main continuity like 5 years ago, pre-COVID, that's how long ago it was. And in hindsight, it's every bit as pointless and stupid now as it was then. This is actually one of the few deaths in superhero comics that I'm kind of in a rush for them to undo. Come on, Batman needs his tea and cucumber sandwiches. Let's go. In Power Rangers Prime #2, we learned that our big villain's name is Rita Repulsa. Boy, they really got outside their comfort zone on that one, didn't they? I'm actually kidding. It's okay with me that they include some classic elements from the franchise, even though this is like a rebooted take on Power Rangers. I mean, you want people to still know that this is a Power Rangers story, so it makes sense. More on classic Power Rangers elements in a minute. So we're at the point in the story where we're getting to know our villain, this new Rita Repulsa, and the heroes, the Rangers, are coming together. They're getting to know each other. And no complaints on that front. Things are progressing nicely. We do hear some familiar last names in this issue, though. My guess is that's going to be a case where some of those people are descendants from characters we know, and others are just names used arbitrarily. This series is going to have VR troopers in it. That's kind of fun and interesting. For those of you who weren't alive back then, in the mid-90s, VR Troopers was a show that was out on the Fox network at the same time as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It was produced by the same company. It wasn't a spin-off, but it's like, okay, Power Rangers was successful, let's do the same kind of thing here. I'm actually legit surprised that it's taken 30 years for the VR Troopers idea to make its way into a Power Rangers story. I'm curious to see what they do with it. The variant cover game for this book continues to be really strong. I'm especially partial to these negative space variant covers by Bon Bernardo. We've got a Mighty Morphin Blue Ranger one here. We actually got a look recently at what the Ranger suits are going to look like for this Power Rangers Prime series. Dan Mora drew this image. I don't know if he designed them, but here they are. Don't really care for them personally, if I'm being honest. They look a little too armored up, a little too Iron Man-ish for my taste. Call me a purist, but I actually prefer the spandex type look for my Power Rangers. I know it looks kind of cheesy on a practical level, but it also looks smooth and sleek, and if you get the right design, it can look really cool. I actually think if you take away the spandex type look, the story actually loses a little bit of its Power Ranger-ness, if that makes sense. But obviously, because this is a comic book and not a TV show or a movie, much is going to depend on how the suits are drawn. It's a big drawback for me, but it doesn't kill the book. I mean, obviously not. The first issue went back for a second and then a third printing, and then my understanding is that this issue has already gone back for another printing as well. And as a Power Ranger fan, that's great to hear. The Terminator #3 is the latest issue in a book that's really been one of the most fun and enjoyable that I've been picking up these last few months. And I think one of the reasons it's so enjoyable is because this comic book has remembered and captured one of the most important elements of the original Terminator movie, as well as the Terminator 2 movie, that horror element, that monster coming to get ya type element. The original Terminator movies were really about monsters, or in this case robots, coming to get people, coming to kill people. And they were kind of like slasher movie villains, like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, in the sense that you could do a lot to them, but you couldn't kill them. You know, they just kept coming. This book has really captured that, and it's also captured the 80s action movie feel. Like, there's a sequence in this book where our main character, our protagonist, is in a helicopter with the Terminator robot, and he thinks he's taken it out, and he hasn't. I loved that. That really felt 80s inspired. But yeah, the Terminator is now on my pull list, and I didn't think it was gonna be. But I will stick around for this book as long as it maintains this quality. It's Ultimate Spider-Man #12, and I'm out. Yeah, I'm out. I'm not gonna give this book any more of my time or my money, at least for now. I know that's not going to make me Mr. Popular, considering Ultimate Spider-Man is one of the most popular comic books in the world right now. But you know, I've devoted as much time, energy, and money to this book as any other reader. I think I've earned the right to say my piece, and I'm going to do that right now. Strictly speaking, this video is a review of issue 12 of Ultimate Spider-Man, and in a vacuum, issue 12 isn't bad at all. The Parkers throw a Christmas party, and members of Mary Jane's family come, and they're like estranged from her, so there's drama there. I mean, it's interesting. But when you look at this book in the context of what this series has and has not given us over the last year, that's when you run into problems. When this book first launched in January, I thought it was going to be about Peter Parker / Spider-Man, his wife Mary Jane, and their two kids, Richard and May. Like, those were going to be your core characters. There's your emotional nucleus right there. I knew that other characters would be there, obviously, but I figured that everything would serve those four, their story, their development, and how Peter's life as Spider-Man affects them. And this book is about the Parker family. Sometimes. And instead of sticking with that one path from a storytelling perspective, we've gone off on a bunch of different, side roads. And what has resulted from that is a book that feels unfocused and herky-jerky, and like it has a pacing problem. For instance, Harry Osborn is in this story. He's the Green Goblin, and he's partnered up with Spider-Man. They're like a team. Harry's wife is Gwen Stacy, who in the traditional continuity is one of Peter's great tragic love interests. Why she's there, I have no idea. And we've spent a lot of time in this book learning about Harry Osborn and the Green Goblin. But why? I mean, he's distracting us from the emotional core of the story, which is the Parker family. Oddly enough, I would have introduced the Harry Osborn stuff around the 12th or 13th issue. There's also been a focus on the more cosmic side of things, and some of the stuff that Jonathan Hickman did in Ultimate Invasion. Like, for instance, in issue 8, Iron Man shows up to give us an update on that or something. Take all of that out. It's distracting. We don't need it. If you want to do the cosmic stuff, save it for year 4 or 5 of this book. Also, can we get some more expository tech talk, please? There's not nearly enough. Like with Harry and Otto Octavius, that's That's the best part of the book for my money. The journalism stuff with J. Jonah Jameson and Ben Parker is really interesting to me, but I don't feel like it has sufficiently served the family story. And if it's not going to do that, then as much as it pains me to say it, either tone it down or just take it out and get rid of it, at least for now. None of these are bad ideas per se, they're good ideas. But it feels like we're shoving all this stuff in way too quickly when our focus should be on Spider-Man and his family and their life. Like, for instance, in the second issue, Peter's young daughter May discovers that he's Spider-Man, and Mary Jane and his son Richard still don't know. I loved that. That was awesome. They could have run with that as the central plot line all year if they wanted to. But not only do they blow it off in the 6th issue, even worse, there's no consequences. Nothing happens. Mary Jane and Richard just kind of go, oh. Or at least that's how it feels. And I don't know if I've ever seen so much potential for good storytelling and drama flushed away in a single issue. Bottom line, I don't know these kids well enough. I don't know this family well enough. And as far as issue 12 is concerned, it's like they're adding this new wrinkle with Mary Jane's family when we don't know Mary Jane and her family well enough. This book is too distracted, and frankly, I've run out of patience. And you know what? If in a year enough people tell me that Ultimate Spider-Man is just this masterclass in comic book storytelling, I'll give it another look. And if I agree with that, I will come on here and break down exactly how this creative team turned this book around. But until then, I'm out. Incidentally, as long as I'm giving you unpopular opinions I did not care for Rogue One at all. I kind of feel like I've been underserving the current ongoing Fantastic Four series written by Ryan North. For whatever reason, I've been dipping in and out of it since it launched in 2022, but every time I dip back into it, I'm really happy with what I find. Such was the case with issue 27. Nikki Masters Grimm is the adopted daughter of Ben Grimm, the Thing, and Alicia Masters Grimm, his wife. And she's a Skrull. In the Marvel Universe, Skrulls are famously aliens that can shapeshift. And in this issue, we see her and her brother have some adventures at school with the shapeshifting power. This was a really fun adventure of an issue. And as someone who is not as familiar with the kids in the Fantastic Four family, it gave me as a reader a really valuable chance to get to know Nikki especially. Around Halloween this year, I went into my local comic shop with my 2 kids who were 5 and 3, and Marvel had put out some special editions of single issues that were specifically geared toward kids, like for kids to pick up and read. For instance, one of them was one of the issues of Fantastic Four, where the FF go to an alternate world where everybody has a dinosaur counterpart. Like we had a Tyrannosaurus Rex version of Dr. Doom. Well, I picked that issue up for my 5-year-old, and she really enjoyed it. She got a kick out of it. I don't know how well Fantastic Four number 27 would do comparatively with a 5-year-old because there's no dinosaurs in it. But if you have like an older grade school aged kid who has a decent handle on their reading, I think Fantastic Four 27 is a pretty safe bet. And that's really the vibe and the feel that I think you want from these mainstream, mainline superhero comic books, or at least I would think so. Books that both adults and kids can enjoy. So my hat's off to the team behind this issue.